Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR. Thank you all for tuning in this morning for this very candid discussion that we are going to have with Tracy Brown. Welcome, Tracy.
Good morning, Christina. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Yeah, happy to be here with you. We have some questions that were submitted ahead of time about diversity and inclusion and its importance in the real estate arena and why those questions are important to realtors. But I'd like, before we get into that, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and also your role with HAR.
Great, I can do that. So I work with leaders all over the United States who are trying to integrate their commitment to inclusion into how they lead in our multicultural, multi-generational, multi-ethnic society. I work with organizations as well that are really choosing to be strategic and proactive in making sure that diversity and inclusion is integrated into everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm Texas based, I love working with HAR. And I work with HAR in terms of strategy, making sure that that different activities are reflecting the commitment to inclusion. And I love, love, love the opportunity I have to do education with members, with staff, and um, and just help folks develop the skills. So I'm excited about the question or the theme today.
Mm-hmm.
What do realtors want to know?
Absolutely. And so I actually reached out to some realtors to get a few questions submitted ahead of time. And the questions that I have prepared for you were asked multiple times. For those of you that are watching live here today, please type any questions that you have for Tracy in the comments, and we will get to those questions. One of the first questions that I received, at least, was, how can D&I help me expand my business?
So there are like hundreds of ways, but what you are inspired, that question inspires me to make a general comment first.
Hmm.
So, what are we talking about when we are talking about diversity and inclusion? Because what I'm finding is still, even in 2021, when the word diversity is used, a lot of people immediately say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about racism." And racism, and race relations is one aspect of the
Hmm.
diversity that is a part of who we are and who we serve. However, it is not the only part. So when I'm using the word diversity through our time together today, I am thinking and talking about all the ways we are different from one another, both genetically
Hmm.
and culturally. And when I'm using the word inclusion, I'm using it in the context of we are valuing diversity or using diversity as a resource and creating an environment where people have the opportunity to do whatever our goal is.
Hmm.
So let's start there. Now, what can realtors do to expand their business, or how does diversity and inclusion relate to a realtor's business? You know, recently in the 2021 Engage conference, I did a session that really talked about this. Understanding diversity and inclusion doesn't have to be some separate thing you do, but you need to understand it in order to do the things you need to do as a realtor. So that session focused on how do you integrate your awareness about diversity and your commitment to inclusion as you build your reputation, as you build or strengthen relationships, and as you drive for business results. So the real question is, how am I doing the things that I do to make my business successful,
Hmm.
and do it in a way that is more than just respectful of diversity, but that uses diversity as a resource to introduce me into new markets, to increase my market share, to give me better results and more referrals, all of those things that realtors want to do to grow their business.
Okay, that makes sense. So another question that I received a few times was, what can I do to make others feel more comfortable around me who maybe don't share the same background, or maybe they don't look like me? What can I do to make others more comfortable around me?
Yeah, with Houston being touted as the most diverse city in the nation, I think that's a really important question because
Mm-hmm.
no matter our own race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, our own religion, our own physical appearance, right? So all of those things can make it challenging for any and all of us to build authentic relationship with people who look different or have a different background. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that people are asking that question. So one of the things that's really important to do is to educate yourself about backgrounds other than your own. Why? Not because you're pandering to them, but because you want to be knowledgeable about basics of things that might be important to the people you're interacting with. And you want to educate yourself so that you don't unconsciously or unintentionally say and do things that are pretty common knowledge, that those things or those comments are not acceptable to key groups. So we can first educate ourselves. And then the second thing is to really understand your own limitations, like where you're assuming everybody is just like you. And then the third thing that all of us can do is to be brave, courageous, and put ourselves in situations with people who are not like us so we get beyond being uncomfortable. So those three things come to mind right away.
Wonderful. This next question kind of ties the last two questions, I guess, together. And that is, and maybe this was something you covered in your session at Engage, what marketing strategies would help all Houstonians feel like they can call me? So again, whether whatever their background is, if they look like me, if they don't look like me, what marketing strategies can I utilize that would help?
Oh, I love that question too. Oh my goodness. So a lot of times we make a mistake. People think, oh, well, if I'm white and I want to have more black clients, I better like put black people in my ads, right? Or in my marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I am wanting to attract the growing international population, and I noticed from the research that in the last 3 years, Houston area has attracted a lot of immigration from a certain part of the world, then I better like have that language. Really, what I would recommend, and those are both good options, but I
Mm-hmm.
would recommend that your mindset be this: if I want to attract all different kinds of people, then my images need to reflect a variety of people, because what that says to everybody is that I have developed the skill and I have the commitment to serve a lot of different people, not just people who look like me. So, as an African American, I'm not necessarily looking only for someone who's African American. I'm looking for I'm looking for your materials to give me confidence that you have developed the flexibility to know that your thinking and your background is not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, beside the images, then I think it's really important, if you want to send that message, that you do have your certifications and you list them. So whether it's NAR certifications or whether it's HAR certifications or HAR hosted programs that give you national certifications, get them,
Mm-hmm.
because you learn things in those classes or courses that you don't know. Like right now, you don't know what you don't know. So you take the classes so that you can begin to increase your awareness. So when I see a realtor and they have, you know, two or three different certifications that are related to diversity or race or communication or international, I'm like, Oh, okay, they've invested some time. They've thought about this.
Hmm.
So, self education, marketing and imagery, certifications, and your affiliations or associations must demonstrate that you are accustomed to interacting with lots of different kinds of people. So, being a realtor professionally, yes, yes, yes. I want to work with a realtor.
Hmm.
And I want to work for a realtor who also is showing me pictures or listing in their materials that they are involved
Hmm.
in a variety of different organizations that are not just related to their own background.
That makes sense. So, everything I'm hearing from you, this is not something that happens accidentally. These are intentional actions that you're going to need to take if you haven't already.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So this is a very popular question, and we've seen this question asked for years, and I think you would be probably the best person to answer this question. So here it is, and that is, what is the best way to handle questions that you might receive from a client or a customer about demographics? This question comes up quite a bit for realtors when they're dealing with their clients and customers. So, how should realtors be handling those questions about demographics?
Yes, it is the most asked question that I've heard in the last year, and even before that. So you would think I would have like a very glib answer to it, but there's not a script. In fact, I mean, there's so many different ways to respond. And so, in fact, what I would suggest or ask is if you're watching live, put in the chat, how do you respond? Like, what's
Hmm.
your go to sentence or your go to response? Here's what I will say, and I'll add a couple, but I'm just curious what you will put in the chat. Here's where I want to start with that. Here's what you do not want to do. Over and over again, I've had realtors say to me, well, I don't know what to say, so I just don't say anything. Or I know professional standards and the code of ethics tells me that I can't do that, but I just am silent. I just kind of change the subject. So, what you don't want to do is avoid it and just not respond at all.
Hmm.
At the same time, I know what it's like to be an individual business owner and you're going after the business, whether it's a buyer or a seller in commercial, a group or a company who's thinking about leasing in your facility. And so there are a lot of ways that you have to find your own language without making it a debate or a judgment. So you don't want to say something like, "Oh, I can't answer that because, it's unethical." Your client or customer, potential customer has no idea most of the time that it is against the code of ethics. So, what are some ways you can bring in the code of ethics and and also speak to the fact that all realtors are called to follow the code of ethics. And then build in or get used to saying what you can do, not what you can't do. So if someone asks you point blank, for example, I want you to take me to the Hispanic part of town,
Hmm.
to be able to say, oh, well, we have people of Hispanic origin who live in all aspects, all parts of the Houston metropolitan
Hmm.
area. Tell me the three things that are most important to you in your home, and let's put a match with that. Or someone says, well, I don't want you to take me to a part of town where there are a lot of Jews, a lot of people who are Jewish, then to be able to say, Well, in our demographics in our city, we don't track people by religion, or in my profession, we don't track people by religion. And again, steer them to what it is, right? You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
steer them based on demographics, steer them to what is most important. Please don't. Now, there are times to simply just say flat out, as a professional realtor, we all have a code of ethics, and we don't recommend based on demographics or based on religion or based on sexual orientation. And you can name some of the 9 categories, because then you're also softening the blow, and you're giving your potential client or your client the understanding that this isn't personal or
Mm-hmm.
personality, it's professional.
Okay.
So know that phrase, know those 9 categories that are in the code of ethics and those standards for professional behavior, and just pick 2 or 3 of them. You don't have to give people a lecture, right? Just don't have to answer the question, because it puts you at risk.
That makes sense. So a few people in the comments are saying send them a link to a resource, right? There's some information, for example, schools. There's school information on har.com. And yet, I believe, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong, said RPR has those detailed reports. I know Realist within Matrix also has reports based on the census data. So there are resources that I think realtors can provide clients. But I going back to what you said, though, I think really identifying what it is do they actually want, right? Well, we really just want a 4-bedroom house with a pool, right? So we can find you one of those pretty much anywhere. So I think that's a really good point that you're making.
And at the same time, I don't want to downplay the reality that if I am, depending on where I am or how I identify my sexual orientation or gender identity, I want to feel safe. And so if I am concerned about feeling safe,
Mm,
that I could be physically harmed because a neighborhood or a community has a reputation for physical violence,
hmm
for people who are gay or transgender. If I'm African American and I am concerned about being in a community where I'm going to be stereotyped and my neighbors are going to avoid me or worse,
hmm
those are real concerns. So I don't want to downplay that they're not real concerns for people you may be working with. What I'm saying is that in your role as a realtor, you could, if someone even says that to you, I'm concerned for my safety. I'm moving here from another city and then, or from a neighborhood. The
hmm
main reason I want to leave this neighborhood is because my neighbors have said mean things to me or um, threatened my children. Then you want to be empathetic about that and hear it. I hear what you're saying, and you might want to do some research with the census data and let me know if there are specific communities that you would like me to focus on,
Okay.
right? And I would be pretty generic about that, and I would also make sure that I knew the real things they were looking for in a home, and I would give them or take them to or introduce them to a variety of neighborhoods, not give them all things in one little small area
hmm
based on my assumption about they'll be comfortable here.
Yeah, right. And I think if anyone that's watching or listening to this program has not heard of the Long Island Divided investigation, I would recommend going to look at it. It's about maybe a 30-minute little documentary that was put together, but this is exactly what they're talking about in that documentary, and steering, even unintentional steering that took place within that documentary and that investigation. I would encourage everyone who has not heard of that to look into that, and we can probably put a link in the comments, but you can also just Google Long Island Divided investigation and you'll find it. Tracy, this was also submitted, and you've already offered some wonderful suggestions, but we also had this submitted where you might have a client or a customer that's asking you to live in a neighborhood that's predominantly made up of a specific race, religion, familial status, and maybe this is somebody that's a friend or family member, and they're telling you, well, I'm just asking off the record. So what are your suggestions? And again, you've already offered a few, but are there any other suggestions specifically in those cases where you may have a friend or a family member who thinks they're asking you off the record?
That is so easy. There is no question, there is no response that is off the record. So even if someone says it's off the record, from their perspective, anything that you say or do in your role as a realtor is on the record. And I don't believe that people are trying to trap you or trick you. I do know that there are folks who at random do some secret shopper type, looking just at random, and you would not want to be the person that got an at random investigator or reviewer and have that become a part of the record. But it's just easy. There's nothing you can say that is off the record. There's a Houston-based story happening in the news right now from a realtor who, just in conversation with a potential executive who was relocating, made the comment that, to an African American executive who's relocating, made a comment similar to, oh, well, yeah, because you're Black, you probably would be interested in knowing that, Black people own this store, but I don't really know anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't mention it if you don't know anything about them. Or made the assumption that, you're driving this luxury vehicle, and went back to the employer who's hosting, right, this relocation visit and said, oh, yeah, well, they're spending your money. They rented a luxury vehicle that is above them. Well, this is an executive, and it was his personal vehicle. And so the things that we say where we think we're just kind of in casual conversation, no, you're not. There's only a professional conversation when you are in the role of being a realtor and doing your work. So again, the answer would be no different than if it were a stranger. The answer would be no different than if it was on the record, because every conversation is on the record. Everyone. And now that even with the changes in the professional standards, that even in your social media, it's on the record.
Mm-hmm.
You are presenting yourself not only as an individual realtor, but as a representative of the profession. So you can never forget that.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for that answer. We did have a comment that came in, Tracy Hughes Hill. After we mentioned the Long Island Divided investigation, she said NAR's Fairhaven is also a good one to watch. Very thought-provoking. So thank you for that reminder, Teresa.
Yes, and I was going to mention Fairhaven as a resource later, so let me say a couple of comments about it now. NAR's Fairhaven, it's interactive. It's you go through it on your own, and you will see assumptions you've made that are like, oh, that might not be true. And you'll get information that, oh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And lots of people have said after going through the Fairhaven process or experience online that they learned something they didn't know. And most important, they felt more confident in how to respond to different questions that might come up or sticky situations that might come up. So, all you need to do is go to the NAR website and, or even just in the internet, put, NAR Fairhaven, and it will pop right up. And I bet you'll enjoy doing it.
Wonderful. So switching gears a little bit here, Tracy, regarding recruiting agents, maybe to a team or brokerage, what is the best way to let others know or maybe advertise that diversity and inclusion is a topic that's very important to you when recruiting?
So I'm breathing just for a minute to think about that. And what comes to mind first is, number one, don't advertise that unless it actually is true, right? Don't
Yeah.
use it as a gimmick. This is, the commitment, the understanding of diversity and the commitment to create an inclusive brokerage or inclusive business. It's not a game. It's not like, oh, let me just check this box.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are committed to that because you believe that it will help you grow your business and help the agents who are part of your brokerage grow your business, then all you have to do is be doing the things that indicate that. They will speak for themselves. So one, you just have to say it. Now, that might be verbally saying it. That might be a statement on your website.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a comment or a certification listed on your business card. So you have to say it, right? If it's a secret, nobody will know. So you want to say it. More important, just as important, you want to be able to explain what you mean when you say you're committed to diversity and inclusion and how that relates to building your brokerage. So if it is that we're committed to diversity or we value diversity and we are committed to being inclusive, and it's because the changing demographics in our metropolitan area require us to be able to connect with and anticipate the needs of such a wide variety of people in our communities, then be able to say that. The mistake that people make is they say, oh, that's a great catchphrase, or oh, we need to put that. We're committed to diversity and inclusion, and it's on the website. And then I'm interviewing with you as an agent, and I ask you a simple question, and you have no answer for it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me know that, oh, okay, you're not real about this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really mean it. Or you're just recruiting me because I'm an agent of color or I'm an agent who's bilingual, but I'm not going to really have a good experience. So be able to explain what it means to you and why. What's your big why?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a big why. And then demonstrate it in your behavior and your business results. So maybe when you first start talking about valuing diversity or wanting to be inclusive, maybe you don't have a lot of results. So you talk about your targets. This is, do you set targets for anything else that's important in your business? Yes.
Yeah.
You set targets for any and everything. I'm not talking about quotas. I'm talking about targets. We're going to build our
Mm-hmm.
relationship with professional associations of people of color, and we have none now. In the next 3 years, we're going to seek out and build relationships with at least 10 professional associations that have a large percentage of members who are people of color, or we're going to build an alliance with Alliance,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Real Estate Professional Association for people who identify as LGBTQ plus. So we're going to build an alliance, and we're going to have 3 of our agents go to their meetings, and we're going to pay for their membership, and we're going to partner on an activity. We set that goal because we're building relationship, we're building reputation, and we're going for business results. One final comment, and then I'll get
Mm-hmm.
off my soapbox on this. See, the reason this is so important because if you just use diversity and inclusion as a catchphrase or
Mm-hmm.
put it over here like it's a box you're checking, you're playing a political game. You're playing for a game for image, not substance. And I don't want you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to go for substance that gives you business results, that helps you to build relationships that turn into profit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got to be able to say and understand this is why we're doing this. It is a professional motivation, not a motivation based on personality. Oh, I like that person. Yeah, he's really easy. Let's bring him in and it'll make us look good versus this person has the relationships and the experience and the reach, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to reach a broader part of the marketplace. And we all make money as a result of that.
Very good. A comment here from Christine. It's about community. If you make money from the community, give back to the community. So we appreciate that, Christine.
Yes, that is perfectly said.
So we mentioned NAR's Fair Haven. Where are there any additional resources where realtors can learn more? You've mentioned some certifications and things like that. So where are some other resources, that realtors can learn from?
So absolutely go to NAR and then do a search on diversity. And you're going to have, a dozen different links to come up in that regard. You could do the same thing with HAR and you'll see links related to professional development, which includes certification. You will see links to past, or you can find if you go to HAR TV, or if you just again search for diversity, you're going to get links to past webinars, right? HAR has provided lots of resources that, are definitely related to the impact of racism on real estate. I think the number one Member Focus Monday in
Mm-hmm.
2020 was the panel on
Mm-hmm.
racism in real estate, and that was repeated earlier this year. Like, hear what your colleagues have to say about the impact. But there have also been member focus Mondays and webinars for HAR members on serving the disabilities community we
Mm-hmm.
did a couple months ago, or being able to communicate across generations, or in the summer a panel of people from the LGBTQ plus community talking about what it's like to be a member, a realtor from that community, but more important, what do you need to know as a realtor to serve?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's no shortage of YouTube videos, websites. Do a search, do a Google search on racism in real estate or inclusion in real estate, and you will find more resources than you could review in 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing that I will mention is there are more than 45,000 members of HAR. Seek out realtors who have a background different from yourself and ask them about their experience. Learn from them about making authentic connections in communities that they may know about, not just where they live, but that they may know about, and cultural norms. You have 45,000 plus resources available to you. Don't just align with people who are just like you.
Excellent, excellent suggestions. Thank you so much, Tracy. You've shared so much with our members today, and I can see in the comments they truly appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want our members to know?
Two things come to mind. It's like, oh, what? Wait, I
Yeah.
know. We're going to close in a minute, but two things. So one coming up, we are going to start a series that, in fact, on November 19th, we're going to be starting a series where we're going to go through some books that help all of us really become better at being inclusive. And so the number one question I get overall, and that's not just specific to realtors, is what do I say? Tracy, tell me what to say. Or more importantly, tell me what not to say,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to make a mistake. And so what happens is we say or do things that unintentionally have a negative impact. So the first book that we're going to dive into is Subtle Acts of Exclusion, where we talk about what are some of the things that typically are called microaggressions, and how do you recover if you say something, but also how do you bring it up if someone says something that's out of line? And how do
Mm-hmm.
you do that in a way that is not blaming, shaming, damning, or
Mm-hmm.
excluding, but helps to build relationships? So, inclusion insights, insights about inclusion that we can learn from books. We're going to start that series. So, keep your eyes open for that. And then the other thing that I really want to just mention is that it's not easy. So don't get frustrated. You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes even now. And so it's about learning and growing and evolving so that everyone can have access to the real estate market. We have to check out our own assumptions and then get beyond those assumptions by building awareness and then skill. And we can all do that and build our businesses and make more money and serve the community and enjoy the fact that there's so much diversity in the world.
Wonderful. Tracy, thank you so much for your time this morning. Our members are excited. Jonna said, I'm looking forward to that list of books. So, yes, be on the lookout. Tracy, again, thank you so much for your time this morning. We truly appreciate it. That's it for this Member Focus Monday, but we will be back next Monday at 9 a.m. with HAR's Professional Development Director, Rita Blevins. We're going to be talking all things professional development and that NAR Code of Ethics. So be sure to tune in. We'll see you next Monday. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.